sub bass. What's up, dogs? It's Cameron with Venus Theory, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at designing sub bass patches, because sub bass patches can be kind of tricky, and they're like, sub bass is hard to hear and it's hard to work with, and it's hard to get the levels right and make it jump out on different speakers and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to just kind of give you guys an overview of how I go about designing sub bass patches, and we're going to do it in a couple different synthesizers so that everybody can follow along. So without further ado, let's dive into Cubase and get started. Alright guys, so today we are here to talk about creating sub basses. How do I do it, and what makes a good sub bass? Because I've had quite a few messages from people saying their sub basses are kind of weak or sound weird or it doesn't fit in the mix, and I kind of just wanted to show this from the ground up. How do I design a sub patch? So I've got a couple different synths open: Charlatan, Massive, Serum, and Retrologue, and I was going to walk through a sub patch in each of these just to show you, more than one way to skin a cat, and just how to do it in different synthesizers, because I get this question a lot. So if you don't have Massive, Serum, or Retrologue, Charlatan is totally free and very, very good for these sub patches. So Oscillator 1, we're going to set the shape to 0, which will make this a triangle wave. Not that interesting, but that's okay. We can take this down an octave, and we're going to blend in this second oscillator. Now we're getting this kind of deep, growly thing. So from here, we want maybe 3 voices of unison, and to detune these a little bit. And you might be saying, oh, detuning your sub, you shouldn't do that. It's going to cause phase cancellation. And yes, it is. And yes, I'm aware of that. And I do this because it just makes things sound a little more alive. Having that static sub bass, like if we went into Massive here and did the Massive sub that everyone does where we just tune this down, sure, that's big and heavy, but it sounds a little flat and lifeless compared to. So next up, what I would do in Charlatan is take this cutoff down. I just want to get the super duper low end, and we could up this stereo spread just a little bit. Again, I know this causes phase cancellation, but that's totally fine. I'm really not concerned with it because I want the low end to move. So after cutting out all that high-end stuff, we get this nice, big, deep patch. You could also give this a bit of portamento. You could maybe open the filter up a bit more and mess with it to your heart's content. So you might be asking yourself at this point, why is Oscillator 1 an octave higher than Oscillator 2? Well, if I take away Oscillator 1, we do get a really nice kind of deep sub, and that might work. But I find having that octave up and blending it in, since it does give you just a touch of that higher register in the low end after the, after this filter takes place, because there's this extra octave up here, you're just getting a little bit more harmonic information, which is really important for subs. So to address that point, once I have my bass patch designed, that's all well and good, but it does need to pop out a bit more. So lately, my favorite has been the kilohertz distortion for this, the saturate mode with just like 1 or 2 dB of drive. So I'm just going to A-B this, and you can listen. And you'll hear it just jumps out a bit more. And we can take a look at frequency here just to see what this is doing. So this, again, is just adding more harmonic information, because when you have something like Massive, I'm going to go ahead and open it up in EQ here. So this is Massive. We're just getting this one harmonic because it's a sine wave. In Charlatan, because we have that second octave and a bit of saturation, you can see we're getting a lot more information up here. And this second order harmonic range, 100 to 250 hertz or so, that is really where the sub bass is going to shine through, because we can't really hear this. And especially on poorer quality speakers, smaller speakers, this is really what's important to get it to poke through. And once we add this distortion with the saturate mode, you can see we're now getting even more harmonic content, so there's even more of this bass that's going to jump out at you. So let's talk about Massive, and how would I design something in Massive? So like I was saying earlier, this is kind of your typical Massive patch, is to go to sine square, set it down an octave, and you get this. Which is all well and good. But what I think people are really missing out on is just upping this wavetable position towards the square a bit more. Why? Because again, harmonic content. I would use a low pass 4 or low pass 2. In this case, we'll go with low pass 2. Route this through the filter. We're going to run these in serial, and we're going to output the mix 1. We're going to crank this all the way up as well. So we've got this going on, and now we're going to do another one an octave down. So we're going to do sine square and up this a little bit. And we could detune these ever so slightly. So from here, we're kind of missing a bunch of volume. And envelope 4 is massive's default. We can up this level. So that way there's no decay on the volume. Sometimes a little bit of decay is nice. Usually after this, I like classic tube or Bronner tube. Just kind of depends on what I want. And again, this is just providing saturation similar to the kilohertz distortion here. So that would sound like that. We could maybe add in this last one. So we're gonna, oh, that's why that wasn't happening. So oscillator 2, turn your amplitude up. We could maybe not detune this as much, or we could bring this up an octave, drop that amplitude, drop it down an octave. Just kind of two different ways of getting the same thing. So that would be kind of my massive patch. I might increase the drive a bit, increase the dry wet, but then we are starting to get more into distorted sub territory, and I don't really recommend that most of the time. I recommend at least having one kind of clean sub to layer in for the low end. So next up, let's go to Serum, and this is one of the easiest patches to create in Serum. We're gonna go to mono, we're gonna set this to legato. Legato is optional, just so it doesn't re-trigger. I wanna up the portamento. I want oscillator A and B. And then I'm gonna go to analog bass drum sine. So from here, usually what I'll do is just kind of make a variance in these wavetables, something like that. And then this guy, we could maybe go to like bend plus. Usually about there works. We need to drop both of these down an octave. And there's a really decent Serum sub, and this is really easy, like I said. So again, for harmonic content, we could add a tube distortion here. Usually I'll set this to be post filter, and I want a low pass. I don't want this resonant peak here, so I'm gonna kind of tame this down. And probably everything below about 400 hertz I want this to affect, and I wanna mix this in about 50%. So without this, with it. So maybe we'll mix this about 70%. You could also set this to be pre-filter or pre-distortion. Also works, maybe increase the drive. But this, very capable one in Serum. Chorus is also a great option here, just a low mix, low rate. Just makes it feel a bit wider. Finally, Retrologue, we can take a look at that for all my Cubase friends, because this is usually how I design my sub. This is pretty much the sub patch I use in every single song. So mono, glide, up the glide a little bit, octave down, sine, triangle, and then another triangle that's an octave up. Then I just mix this together. Low pass 18. Tube distortion. And then adjust the volume to taste. And if you listen to any of my songs, I guarantee you will hear probably that exact sound. So that is sub-based design, and I hope this helps because I know these can be kind of tricky because it's hard to hear and it's really easy to overdo because you can't hear it, so you end up compensating with way too much distortion and other things. But I hope this is a good overview for you guys to kind of figure out how to design a sub-bass that moves a little bit, has a bit of life, but is also big, heavy, and effective. And that's it for this video, guys, so thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again soon.